That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about They Cloned Tyrone, the directorial debut of Juel Taylor, which premiered at the 2023 American Black Film Festival. It was released in limited theatrical window July 14th and will be available to stream on Netflix July 21st, 2023.
Directorial debut. The story, a series of eerie events thrust an unlikely trio onto the trail of a nefarious government conspiracy. I thought this movie was very interesting.
I agree.
The story is pretty captivating. And I think it's more interesting to talk about than maybe watching it.
What's being suggested, the subtext, I think like a lot of Netflix films, the running time, the pacing goes against it.
Yeah.
Because at 2 hours, I feel like there's some things that could have been trimmed. But that said, it's pretty compelling.
So the trio consists of John Boyega
As Fontaine.
Teyonah Parris.
As Yo-Yo.
And Jamie Foxx.
Is it Slick Charles?
So Jamie Foxx is a pimp. Teyonah Parris is a prostitute, and John Boyega is a drug dealer, and they live in this neighborhood called the Glen, which is supposed to be like an urban area.
The license plates all say a swell place.
So what is this government conspiracy? We see very early on in the film that John Boyega's character is shot and killed. But then all of a sudden the film restarts where we started originally, a la Groundhog Day. So we find out he's a clone. But we don't find out why he's being cloned until later in the film. However, we do find out that everyone in this community is being experimented on by this chemical that's being put in like the fried chicken, the grape drink, the relaxer cream. And this drug is making the community more amenable to suggestion. They're more agreeable. So it would appear that like mind control is being done on these people. So John Boyega employs the help of the prostitute and the pimp who witnessed him being shot and killed. And they very easily agree to help him, which we need to talk about. And they discover the underground labs, and the bulk of the running time is them trying to piece everything together. And we find out that Fontaine, John Boyega's character, has been cloned, but the person responsible for this science is also John Boyega. He's a geneticist, so we see him as an old man. And the reason he's doing this is because we find out that the mind control is not enough. Because this entity, whoever they are, this government agency, they want to create a utopia. And through the billions of dollars they've spent and all the experiments, they realize that controlling people's minds is not enough. Because it works on different communities, right? So like blacks, Asians, Latinos. But then once you get those people controlled and then you try to put them together, they still don't get along. So they're cloning people to try to make everyone the same. So the goal is over generations, everyone will be the same kind of person. And it's not explicitly explained, but we do see a visual representation that would lead us to believe that everyone might appear to look white. But I didn't get the vibe of like eugenics as much as just...
It's almost more insidious than that.
Yeah.
Almost it is, because we have, this black geneticist at the forefront of creating this possibility.
But the trio expose what's happening. They end up killing the geneticist, and Kiefer Sutherland is in the film playing like the subordinate to whomever's in charge. We don't know. So in this neighborhood, the Glen, everything's exposed and people are kind of freed. But we realize that these experiments are happening in every major city. So the end of the film, we move to Los Angeles and we see John Boyega playing a different character named Tyrone. And Tyrone sees on the TV that something similar has happened, that one of these research centers has been exposed, and a man on the news is being interviewed who is a clone of Tyrone. And then the film ends. The
film ends with Erykah Badu has redone the lyrics to her song Tyrone to fit with the themes of this film.
Which is very clever.
I think so too, yeah.
I'm just going to go through my notes then.
Okay.
I was confused on the time period.
I was too, because we have flip phones, we have non flat screen television sets, but there are references that kind of help us navigate, like SpongeBob SquarePants. There's a reference to Denzel Washington, the Book of Eli, which is 2010. So this is before the advent of social media per se, and I'm guessing that's on purpose, because why wouldn't, and maybe the film also feels a little lacking to me, because how much more powerful or insidious would this tool be using something like TikTok?
Well, and the film to me has the vibe of like the mid to late 90s.
It has that. I think the cinematographer Ken Seng, who shot Deadpool, I think there was a deliberate choice to make this seem kind of gritty, like a lot of 70s blaxploitation films, because all three principles remind me of some templates from then. There's a Foxy Brown reference to Teyonah Parris, for instance, who kind of does fit that. Jamie Foxx is kind of giving me a little bit of Rudy Ray Moore, is trying to be this flamboyant pimp. And then John Boyega is a little more of an innocent type. He was reminding me of Glenn Turman in JD's Revenge, which is also a weird hybrid of a film and is comparable.
Yeah. So the opening of the film had me thinking this would be more comedic than it turns out to be. So the tone's a little strange because the bulk of the humor comes from Jamie Foxx and Teyonah Parris. I think Teyonah's character is more effective.
I like them both, but they're also quite overpowering when it comes to Fontaine.
Yeah, when they're all together, it's like, yeah, John Boyega's character might as well not even be there.
It almost reminded me of Daniel Kaluuya in Nope.
Yeah, but the tone's interesting because in the beginning it had a more thriller, dark vibe with the humor, and I was really into it. But then as things start to adjust, it becomes more serious, and I had a harder time feeling engaged.
Sure, yeah, and as all is revealed, this really feels like something Boots Riley would have done. You haven't seen Sorry to Bother You, but that film is a lot more bonkers and a lot more, I think, heavy hitting, especially on the satirical front. That film just feels more provocative innately than this does.
The liquor store Fontaine visits is called Got Dranks. I thought that was funny. So, okay, so this trio, John Boyega's character finds out that there is a pimp and a prostitute who witnessed him being shot and killed. So he wants to find out information from them. And he very easily convinces them to help him, like assist him in finding who did it. And Teyonah says, like, well, I saw this kind of car. So they're driving around. They see a house with that car parked in front. They break into the house. And they're both very willing, Jamie Foxx and Teyonah Parris' characters, to help him. And I was a little confused because he doesn't really have anything on them, and I don't know why they were invested in helping him.
Sure.
But when they get to that house, a funny moment is, because they're saying that it's like a trap house, but then when they get into the trap house, the trap house has a break room. I thought that was funny. And then they find an elevator, and they go down the elevator, which I thought was weird that this underground lab is not secure at all.
Yes.
The house is not secure. Getting into the elevator is not secure. But then getting out, we see the employee, like the lab technician, he needs a badge to get out. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was odd.
And meanwhile, they're monitoring everybody in the Glen because there's another headquarters.
Yeah, at a chicken shack.
At an underground lab that they go to. And it's like they are... I don't know how they wouldn't see that their security had been breached.
Yes.
Perhaps. But once we get into the nitty gritty of it, there are all kinds of 70s references, especially Kubrick, like Clockwork Orange. Like there's literally a woman with her eyes taped open. I think Michael Crichton's Coma was also reminding me of that. There's a white DJ called DJ Strangelove, also a Kubrick reference.
I really like the music in the film. There's some original music. You mentioned the sort of like reinterpretation of Erykah Badu's Tyrone. But we have some Michael Jackson in there, some Diana Ross.
Love Hangover.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the music. So there's a funny moment because Teyonah Parris' character, she stays with her grandmother, I believe. And in her room, she has like a full collection of the Nancy Drew books.
I'm like, I recognize those spines. And Nancy Drew gets a few shout outs.
She does, because Teyonah's character is basically like, they're saying, what would Nancy Drew do? So she's trying to be a detective to piece everything together. I thought that was really cute. So when we find out there is something in the food is when... So the trio break into this trap house, figure out what's going on. They spend the night because the block is hot. And the next morning, Jamie Foxx is really hungry. So they're like, well, let's eat so you'll calm down. So they go to a chicken place.
It's called Goddamn Chicken.
Yes. And they're eating the chicken, and John Boyega, who up to that point's been very flat, very sort of like just mean mugging everyone, all of a sudden he starts laughing. And Jamie Foxx is like, it's nice to see you smile and laugh. I've never seen you laugh. And then he starts thinking, wait, I've never seen you laugh, like ever. And then he looks around and everyone's laughing, and he realizes, oh, they're putting something in the food to make us all act like this. So that's when Teyonah goes and like flirts with the manager to get more information. And that's when we see that there's surveillance happening. And I thought that was a good scene.
It's good.
It was very effective.
I also like the scene where they go to the church and we get the one snippet of David Allen Grier preaching to the congregation. And it's clear that non-church activities are probably happening in there. And they all drank the grape drink that has also been laced with whatever drug this is. And that was giving me kind of like Jordan Peele doing Black Jesus.
And David Allen Grier playing a preacher always reminds me of Martin when he played the Reverend Leon Love.
Which Friday is it where John Witherspoon opens up the chicken shack?
Number 3?
Is it the third one?
I think it's number 3.
Yeah, with chicken so good you'll slap your mama.
Yeah, or ribs.
Was it ribs? Okay.
Yeah, it's barbecue. I think.
Okay.
So we also find out with the cloning that they're cloning people to help them. So like we see that though there's a white guy working in the first lab, we see there's a white guy who's managing the chicken shack.
But they all have afros.
And we find out that that's a kink in the cloning, that they can't quite figure out the hair, so that's why they all have this funky hair. I thought that was good. There's reference to Kevin Bacon a few times.
Hollow Man they seem to think is a good film, which made me want to rewatch Hollow Man. It's been a minute. But they also, Juel Taylor apparently knows his film references, because is there any other film that references the movie Telling Lies in America?
I wouldn't have known that reference. You recognized it.
I remember, I don't think I've ever seen it, but I remember the VHS cover.
So, okay, I do think that the story is smart and there's a lot to talk about. And probably the biggest thing that hit me, and I wish we would have maybe spent more time on that, is we sort of get the sense from when we're talking to Kiefer Sutherland, when he makes his introduction and explains kind of what's going on, that he basically says that they keep the people in this neighborhood alive
And undisturbed.
so that the neighborhood can stay undesirable. So basically, like having these black people living in this ghetto and making it undesirable kind of allows this entity to experiment on them because no one wants to be here.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting and subversive, and really could have been there could have been a provocative take on that. I feel like this film plays it pretty safe. Like it's not really pushing, it's just kind of presenting like, oh, we're able to do this because everyone seems content living in this environment. What I guess I wanted, how I would have changed this is to maybe get to drop the ball sooner, and maybe the community realizes, wait, so we're being drugged so that we're all nicer to each other. And then maybe some people in the community are like, well, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, play with that ambiguity a bit more, because you know that some people would take that stance.
And maybe there's conflict, like maybe half the community are actually for it and they're defending the entity while the other half want to fight against it. That really would have been something to talk about.
Well, because the one key line that I think the old Fontaine says is that assimilation is better than annihilation, which is I think what is so troubling about all of this. And it reminded me of this study, this hypothesis called anti-Oedipus, which is positing schizoanalysis that's taking a look at schizophrenia versus capitalism, and how schizophrenia is the anti-establishment because it doesn't fit into any kind of rhythm or workable mentality that capitalism can control. And this film was just making me think all kinds of very compelling, interesting, provocative thoughts that I don't necessarily know that it's going there itself.
Well, because even there's a moment when we see twice, I believe, John Boyega's character at home, and he's trying to talk. So it would appear that his mom is always in her room, and we see him trying to ask her, like, "Are you hungry? Do you want a sandwich?" And she's like, "No, I'm fine, whatever." And then the final time he goes to talk to her, it's because he realizes what's going on and he wants to talk to her. So he's like, "Please, Mom, open the door so I can talk to you." And she keeps making excuses. So finally he breaks down the door, and we realize his mom is not in that bedroom. It's an empty bedroom with like a speaker playing a recording of the mom. And I thought that was very interesting. They could have played up on that, how like this entity, this government agency, they're banking on the fact that this community is complacent. So it kind of scratches the surface.
It does, yeah. And also it reminds me of those 70s political thrillers, like, you know, it's not really The Conversation or Parallax View, where we're under this we realize suddenly that and are paranoid by we're under this kind of surveillance that we can just never escape from.
Yeah.
And also, you know, it's troubling that what is, you know, kind of allowing someone to control a community is by how predictable we behave with the traditions that we keep up with and the patterns that we invest in that really make us targets.
Yeah, yeah. The Chicken Shack, their tagline is, "Who needs vices when you got all these herbs and spices?"
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good, nice details.
Well, there's another moment where John Boyega's character is trying to do some covert spying or whatever. And so he's pretending to be in the car with the prostitute. So they're like mimicking sex acts.
With his rival too, they're communicating, yeah.
I thought that was funny. But that's all I had. I do think it's a smart story and there are a lot of interesting components. It did feel long. I do think when Kiefer Sutherland hits the scene, it's like at the hour 10-minute mark, and I really thought the movie was done. It felt long enough at that point.
Sure. And
then when I realized we had another 45 minutes, it became pretty tedious.
I agree. Yeah, it hits a kind of point of stagnation. But again, I much prefer watching anything that is going to make you want to have a vibrant discussion afterwards, and I think this is that kind of film.
I would recommend checking it out. However, I thought it was okay, fine. So I'm giving it 2.5 out of 5.
I'm giving it 3.
Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.